Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every person's life when silence becomes heavier than words, when waiting becomes more painful than taking that first step. For those who've held back, stayed distant, or built walls to feel safe, today that moment ends, because what I'm about to share with you is the spark that finally makes the avoidant initiate, that pushes the hesitant to lead. You see, life doesn't reward the one who hides behind fear. It rewards the one who decides right here, right now, to break the pattern, to stop running from connection, from growth, from truth. This is not about changing who you are. It's about awakening the power that's been buried beneath hesitation. So if you've ever found yourself holding back, protecting your heart, or convincing yourself that staying safe was the answer, this message is your wake-up call, because the moment you choose to take the lead, everything begins to shift. Your confidence, your relationships, your destiny. Get ready, because today we're not just talking about transformation, we're living it. This is the day the avoidant becomes unstoppable. Awareness is the first step toward transformation, because nothing changes until you become conscious of what's holding you back. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to their emotions, repeating patterns, and calling it destiny. But awareness breaks that cycle. It's the moment you stop running and start observing. It's the moment you ask yourself not, why is this happening to me? But what am I doing that keeps creating this? Awareness pulls you out of the fog of confusion into the light of truth. It's not about judgment. It's about understanding. When you finally see yourself clearly, your fears, your habits, your triggers, you take back the power that you unknowingly gave away. For the avoidant person, this step is everything. Avoidance often comes from an old story, pain from the past that taught you it's safer to stay distant, safer to not care too deeply, safer to not lead, because leadership invites responsibility and vulnerability. But the truth is you can't heal what you refuse to see. Awareness asks you to pause and look at yourself with honesty, not shame. It's the courage to say, yes, I pull away when things get close. Yes, I avoid taking initiative because I fear rejection or loss of control. That level of truth may sting, but it's the kind of pain that frees you. It's the pain of growth, not the pain of guilt. When you become aware of your avoidance, something powerful happens. You start noticing the small choices that shape your entire life. You see how often you stay quiet when you want to speak, how you delay decisions, hoping things will fix themselves, how you choose distance when connection scares you. Awareness brings these patterns to light, and once they're visible, they lose their grip, because you can't be controlled by something you can see clearly. Awareness gives you perspective. It allows you to respond instead of react. It gives you the power to choose differently. Every transformation begins with this moment of awakening. It's like standing in front of a mirror for the first time after years of being blindfolded. You may not like everything you see, but now you finally see the truth, and truth is always the foundation of change. When Tony Robbins talks about personal power, this is what he means: the ability to recognize that you are the source of your experience. You are not a victim of your emotions or your past. You are the observer who can shift your direction by changing your level of awareness. Think about it. Every great leader, every confident person you admire started by becoming aware of their weaknesses, their patterns, their emotional blocks. Awareness doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. It's the ultimate act of strength to look at your own life and admit what's real. Because once you admit it, you can transform it. Once you bring awareness to avoidance, the walls you built for protection start to crack, not to destroy you, but to let light in. Transformation doesn't happen through motivation alone. It happens through understanding. Awareness shows you why you've been playing small, why you've been hiding from leadership, why you've been afraid to take initiative. And in that understanding, you find compassion for yourself. You stop blaming and start rebuilding. You begin to realize that awareness isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything new. It's the first spark that ignites courage, responsibility, and change. When you are aware, every moment becomes a choice. You can choose to stay the same or take the first step forward. You can choose fear or growth. You can choose silence or action, and that choice made in awareness is the seed of transformation. Because when you finally see yourself clearly, you stop living by old patterns and start living by purpose. That's when an avoidant stops running and starts leading, not because they're suddenly fearless, but because awareness gave them the strength to face their fear head on. Fear loses power the moment you take action. Fear thrives in stillness, in hesitation, in overthinking. It grows stronger every time you delay, every time you wait for the right moment that never comes. The truth is, fear isn't destroyed by waiting, it's destroyed by movement. The instant you decide to act, even if you're uncertain, even if your heart is pounding, fear begins to shrink. It's like stepping into a dark room and realizing the monster you imagined was only a shadow. The power of fear lies not in reality, but in imagination. When you act, you prove to yourself that the shadow was never real. It was your mind magnifying uncertainty. Avoidant individuals often let fear run their lives. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being misunderstood. It whispers lies that sound like protection. Don't get too close. Don't take the lead. Don't put yourself out there. And because those lies feel safe, they become habits. But that safety is a trap, a soft cage that stops you from growing. Taking action is the only way to break it. Action creates evidence that your fear was exaggerated. It gives your brain proof that you can survive discomfort, that you can do hard things, that vulnerability won't destroy you. Every time you act in spite of fear, your confidence grows. It's like building muscle. Each rep of courage strengthens your belief in yourself. You start small, saying what you really think, making a decision without overanalyzing, reaching out when you'd normally retreat. Each small step matters because it chips away at fear's foundation. Soon, what once terrified you becomes natural. That's the power of momentum. Fear feeds on stagnation, but momentum starves it. Tony Robbins often says the only way to defeat fear is to dance with it. That means you don't wait for fear to disappear. You move with it. You take the step even when your knees shake, even when your voice trembles, because fear is not your enemy. It's a signal. It shows you where growth lies. The things that scare you most are often the very things that would transform you. The moment you take action, that transformation begins. Taking action doesn't mean recklessness. It means courage with awareness. It means choosing to move forward despite uncertainty. The avoidant person's instinct is to withdraw, to delay confrontation, to stay within the comfort zone of predictability. But leadership, initiative, and transformation exist outside that zone. You cannot lead from fear. You can only lead through it. When you take that first brave action, you shift from being controlled by fear to being guided by purpose. You no longer wait for permission. You give yourself permission. Fear will never completely disappear, and that's okay. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. It's to master it. And to understand that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move anyway. Every successful person, every confident leader still feels fear. The difference is they've trained themselves to act before fear takes control. They've learned that motion changes emotion. When you move your body, when you shift your focus, when you take one bold step forward, your physiology changes, and so does your mindset. Action creates clarity. You may not know exactly what to do or how things will turn out, but action reveals what overthinking hides. You learn by doing. You grow by trying. You evolve by failing and rising again. And every time you rise, fear loses a little more of its grip. Eventually, you realize that fear was never a wall. It was a doorway. You just had to walk through it. So when fear tells you to wait, to stay safe, to remain quiet, do the opposite. Speak up. Take the step. Make the move. Because the moment you act, you take back your power. Fear cannot survive in motion. It feeds on your hesitation, but it starves in your determination. The greatest shift happens when you stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I fly? That's when the avoidant becomes the initiator. That's when the follower becomes the leader. Because once you understand that fear loses power the moment you take action, nothing and no one can stop you. Connection begins when you choose vulnerability over control. Most people think connection is about being perfect, saying the right things, or appearing strong. But the truth is, connection is built on something far deeper, authenticity. It's when you let down your guard, when you stop pretending to have it all figured out, when you allow someone to see your truth without a mask. That's when real human connection begins. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the ultimate strength. Standing in your truth and saying, this is me, flaws and all, and allowing others to meet you there. For an avoidant person, vulnerability feels dangerous. Control feels safer. When you control your emotions, your environment, and your distance, you believe you're protecting yourself from pain. But what you're really doing is protecting yourself from connection. You can't bond with people through perfection or distance. You bond through honesty, through shared struggle, through emotional openness. Vulnerability is the bridge that allows others to truly understand you. It's the foundation of trust, and trust is the heartbeat of connection. Tony Robbins often says, the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. And relationships, whether personal or professional, cannot grow without vulnerability. Control might make you feel powerful for a while, but it also isolates you. It keeps you in a constant state of emotional tension, always managing, never relaxing. Vulnerability releases that tension. It invites closeness. It invites empathy. It invites love. When you open up, you give others permission to do the same. You create a space where honesty replaces fear and connection replaces loneliness. Being vulnerable doesn't mean spilling your emotions everywhere or losing boundaries. It means having the courage to be real. It's saying, I don't know, I need help, or that hurt me, instead of pretending you're unaffected. It's expressing your truth with honesty, not with defense. Vulnerability is choosing to show up as your authentic self, even when it's uncomfortable. And that's where true connection happens, when two people meet without masks. Avoidant individuals often grew up in environments where emotional openness was met with pain, rejection, or misunderstanding. So they learned to shut down, to protect their hearts by withdrawing. But that strategy, while it may have once been necessary, no longer serves them in adulthood. To initiate and lead, you must be willing to connect. You must be willing to let others in. Vulnerability doesn't make you weak. It makes you relatable. People don't follow perfection. They follow authenticity. They trust leaders who show emotion, who own their mistakes, who speak with heart. When you stop trying to control how others see you, you start living freely. You begin to experience relationships not as a performance, but as a genuine exchange of energy. You no longer need to manipulate outcomes or hide behind emotional armor. You simply show up fully and truthful. That's when love deepens, friendships strengthen, and opportunities expand. Because vulnerability is magnetic. It attracts truth, compassion, and loyalty. It's also the key to healing. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you begin to process emotions you've buried for years. You let yourself feel again, and feeling is how you heal. You may cry, you may stumble, but that's part of being alive. Control numbs you, vulnerability wakes you up. It teaches you that it's okay to not be okay sometimes, that strength and softness can coexist. And the more you embrace that balance, the more your relationships and your confidence grow. Choosing vulnerability over control transforms you from someone who hides to someone who leads with heart. It shifts your energy from fear to trust, from protection to presence. You stop needing to have power over everything and instead begin to share power with others. That's where influence comes from, not from domination, but from authenticity. The avoidant person who learns to open up becomes the most powerful kind of leader, the one who connects deeply, listens fully, and inspires naturally. In the end, connection is not built by control, it's built by courage. The courage to be seen, to be heard, to be real. When you choose vulnerability, you choose connection. When you choose connection, you choose life. And when you live that way, people don't just follow you, they feel you, they trust you. And that's when you truly begin to lead. Leadership starts with leading yourself first. You can't inspire, guide, or influence others if you're lost in your own uncertainty. True leadership doesn't begin when you take control of others. It begins the moment you take control of your own mindset, emotions, and actions. Most people think leadership is about authority or titles, but it's really about personal mastery. It's about holding yourself accountable, making decisions from strength instead of fear, and being the kind of person others naturally trust and respect. You cannot expect others to follow a direction that you haven't yet committed to yourself. Leading yourself first means owning your growth, your habits, and your energy. For the avoidant person, this principle is life-changing. Avoidants often withdraw from responsibility because leading feels risky. To lead means to be visible, to make decisions, to be open to failure or criticism. But hiding from leadership is really hiding from your own potential. When you start leading yourself, everything changes. You stop waiting for circumstances to improve and start creating the change yourself. You stop blaming others for your limitation and begin shaping your destiny. Leadership is not about control, it's about responsibility. It's standing up and saying, I am the one who determines what happens next in my life. Tony Robbins teaches that success and fulfillment come from raising your personal standards. Leading yourself means setting those standards and living by them, even when no one is watching. It's waking up through on your promises and not letting fear dictate your actions. It's building discipline when it's easier to stay comfortable. The greatest leaders in the world are not those who control others. They are those who have mastered themselves. They manage their emotions. They stay centered under pressure, and they move forward even when things feel uncertain. That level of self-leadership radiates confidence and stability, and people are drawn to that. Self-leadership also means becoming aware of your inner dialogue. The voice inside your head is powerful. If it constantly tells you that you're not enough, that you should play it safe, that you'll fail if you try, then that's the narrative you'll live by. Leading yourself requires challenging that voice. It means replacing self-doubt with self-command. Instead of saying, I can't do this, you begin saying, I'll figure it out. That shift in mindset is the foundation of leadership. Because if you can't lead your own mind, you'll never lead your life. Leading yourself also means taking ownership of your emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively, you learn to respond with intention. You stop letting fear, anger, or anxiety control your choices. You learn emotional regulation, the ability to stay grounded when things go wrong. This is what makes strong leaders unshakable. They don't collapse under pressure because they've built emotional resilience. For the avoidant person, that means no longer running from feelings but learning to face and manage them. That's how you become emotionally powerful, by staying present in the discomfort instead of escaping it. Once you start leading yourself, people naturally begin to see you differently. Your presence becomes calm, certain, and influential. You don't need to demand respect. It's earned through your actions. You become an example of strength, clarity, and self-trust. And the best part is you start trusting yourself again. You realize that you can handle challenges, make decisions, and move through fear. You stop needing validation because you become your own source of certainty. Leadership also means growth. It means constantly pushing yourself to evolve. You read, you learn, you reflect, you take risks. You treat your life as a work in progress rather than a finished product. The avoidant who once hid from responsibility begins to embrace it. You stop avoiding leadership because you realize that leadership isn't about pressure, it's about purpose. You start living intentionally instead of reactively. And that shift changes everything. When you lead yourself, you stop waiting for motivation, you create it. You stop following the crowd, you set the direction. You stop being defined by your past, you define your future. That's the essence of leadership. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most centered. It's about showing up consistently with integrity, with courage, and with vision. When you lead yourself, you build the inner foundation that allows you to lead others naturally. At the core, self-leadership is freedom. It frees you from fear, from indecision, from avoidance. It turns you into the kind of person who acts with purpose instead of hesitation. And when you reach that level, people don't just hear your words, they feel your example, because the greatest leaders are not those who control others, but those who first learn to lead themselves with clarity, courage, and conviction. Growth requires stepping into discomfort consistently. Real growth doesn't happen when life feels easy or predictable. It happens in those moments when you're uncomfortable, uncertain, and challenged. The human mind is wired to seek safety, but the soul is built to seek expansion. That's why the moments that scare you the most are often the ones that hold the greatest opportunity for transformation. Comfort feels safe, but it's also the silent killer of progress. You can't evolve while staying in the same emotional, mental, or physical space. Growth demands movement, and movement always comes with friction. For the avoidant person, discomfort is the very thing they run from. It's the feeling of emotional exposure, confrontation, or risk that triggers withdrawal. But that avoidance creates stagnation. You can't become confident while hiding from discomfort. You can't become a leader while avoiding challenge. You can't grow stronger while protecting your weaknesses. The path to transformation is through discomfort, not around it. Every time you face something that scares you, a difficult conversation, a new experience, or an uncertain choice, you expand your limits. You train your nervous system to adapt, your mind to stretch, and your spirit to rise. Tony Robbins often says, if you're not growing, you die. It might sound extreme, but it's true. Growth gives life meaning. It's what keeps your energy alive and your mind sharp. But to grow, you must accept that discomfort is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of progress. The pain of growth is the birth pain of new potential. Think about physical training. Your muscles only grow when they're challenged beyond their comfort zone. The same principle applies to your mind and emotions. The more you lean into what feels uncomfortable, the stronger, wiser, and freer you become. Discomfort also builds resilience. Each time you face it, instead of avoiding it, you send yourself a powerful message. I can handle this. That message rewires your identity. You start to see yourself not as fragile, but as capable. You begin to trust your ability to adapt, and that trust becomes the foundation of confidence. For the avoidant individual, this is a massive shift. Instead of running from what feels hard, you begin to step toward it. You stop asking, how can I avoid this? And start asking, what can I learn from this? That's when life stops controlling you and you start controlling your life. Growth through discomfort also deepens emotional intelligence. When you face uncomfortable feelings, fear, sadness, insecurity, you begin to understand them instead of being ruled by them. You realize emotions are not enemies, they are signals. They teach you what needs healing, what needs changing, and what needs letting go. Avoiding them only keeps you stuck in patterns. Facing them allows you to break free. Every emotional challenge you confront becomes a teacher, guiding you toward greater awareness and strength. Stepping into discomfort doesn't mean living in chaos or forcing yourself into pain for no reason. It means intentionally choosing challenges that align with your vision. It means doing what's necessary to grow, even when it's not easy. Starting that conversation, applying for that opportunity, taking that risk, admitting that truth. These moments define you. Discomfort is the price of growth, and those willing to pay it always rise higher than those who play safe. Over time, something incredible happens. The things that once terrified you become normal. What used to be hard becomes your new baseline. You evolve. That's the beauty of consistent discomfort. It keeps expanding your comfort zone. Leaders, achievers, and visionaries understand this. They don't wait to feel ready. They use discomfort as their compass. If something scares them, they know it's worth doing. Because fear and growth live in the same place. The avoidant who learns to embrace discomfort stops being reactive and starts being proactive. You stop letting fear dictate your choices. You realize that growth doesn't mean being fearless. It means being courageous enough to act while you're scared. Each step you take into discomfort becomes a declaration of strength. You prove to yourself that you're capable of handling life, no matter how uncertain it feels. In the end, growth and comfort cannot coexist. You must choose one. Comfort keeps you safe, but growth makes you strong. And strength is what leads to confidence, connection, and leadership. When you commit to stepping into discomfort consistently, you build an unshakable inner foundation. You stop shrinking to fit your fears and start expanding to meet your potential. Because the truth is, everything you've ever wanted, freedom, success, love, fulfillment, lives just beyond your comfort zone. Taking initiative turns hesitation into unstoppable momentum. Every great transformation begins with a single decision, the decision to start. It doesn't matter how small that first step is. What matters is that you take it. Momentum is the force that carries you forward, and it only appears after action. Most people wait to feel ready, confident, or inspired before they move, but that's the biggest mistake. Readiness doesn't come first. Action does. When you take initiative, even in uncertainty, you ignite a chain reaction of progress. You prove to yourself that you're capable, that you can trust your instincts, and that hesitation no longer has power over you. For the avoidant person, hesitation is a familiar state. They overthink, analyze, and delay because taking initiative feels vulnerable. It exposes them to risk, to possible rejection, or to failure. But what they don't realize is that hesitation drains energy while action creates it. The longer you hesitate, the heavier the decision feels. But the moment you take initiative, that weight begins to lift. Action replaces anxiety. Movement replaces doubt. You don't need to see the entire path. Just take one step. Once you do, the next one becomes clearer. That's how momentum is born. Tony Robbins often says, never leave the site of a decision without taking immediate action, because that single action locks in your commitment. It tells your brain this is happening. It shifts you from thinking mode to doing mode. The mind loves comfort, but the body loves movement. When you align the two through action, your confidence begins to grow naturally. You stop waiting for external motivation because you start generating it from within. Initiative is the fuel of transformation. It's how leaders, creators, and achievers separate themselves from dreamers. Momentum is a powerful force because once it's in motion, it becomes hard to stop. Think about a rolling wheel at first. It takes effort to push, but once it's moving, it starts carrying its own weight. Your life works the same way. The hardest part is starting, but once you do, things begin to flow. Opportunities appear, energy rises, and clarity follows. Taking initiative builds self-trust. It's how you prove to yourself that you're someone who acts, not someone who waits. And that belief changes everything. Because when you believe in your ability to take action, you stop fearing failure. You start realizing that even mistakes move you forward. Avoidant individuals often struggle with initiative because they fear being wrong or rejected. But leadership isn't about perfection. It's about movement. People follow those who dare to go first. When you take initiative, you set an example of courage. You show others that progress matters more than comfort. You show that life rewards those who dare to begin. Even if you stumble, even if things don't go as planned, you'll have something most people never do. Momentum. Every time you act, you build inner momentum that spills into other areas of your life. You make one bold move, and suddenly you're inspired to make another. You speak up once, and the next time it's easier. You take one risk, and your tolerance for fear expands. Momentum compounds, just like interest. It grows faster the longer you keep it going. That's why consistent initiative is more important than perfect timing. One small action every day builds a rhythm of success. Taking initiative also shifts your identity. You stop seeing yourself as passive or hesitant and start viewing yourself as proactive and decisive. You begin to trust your ability to create outcomes instead of waiting for them. That shift in identity is what transforms an avoidant into a leader. You no longer ask, what if it doesn't work? You ask, what if it does? That mindset attracts opportunities, people, and energy that align with your growth. Action doesn't just change your external results, it changes your internal world. It rewires your brain to associate movement with safety, not fear. It teaches you that confidence is not something you wait for, it's something you create through repetition. Every time you take initiative, you strengthen your inner power. You stop being the person who avoids challenges and become the one who initiates change. That's what unstoppable momentum looks like, a force that begins within and moves outward, influencing everything it touches. In the end, hesitation keeps you stuck in a loop of what if. Initiative breaks that loop. It turns uncertainty into learning, fear into courage, and dreams into reality. The avoidant who learns to take initiative no longer waits for perfect conditions. They create them, because when you act, life responds. When you move, momentum follows, and once you've built that momentum, nothing can stop you. You become the driver of your destiny, not the passenger. You stop hesitating and start leading, and from that moment on, every step you take carries the unstoppable force of action, courage, and self-belief.